read.ies for Saturday's reunion with Knicks. Philadelphia. On one end of the court at the near-empty Wells Fargo Center, Billy Donovan, the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, spoke glowingly of the efforts of his trio of star players to find a way to meld their talents, even if the record has not shown that yet. And on the other end, as a suitable backdrop for his words, Carmelo Anthony, Paul George and Russell Westbrook took turns shooting against a coach serving as a defender at the morning shoot-around, laughing and smiling through the workout. One day ahead of his return to Madison Square Garden for his first game back since being traded, Anthony looked as if he didn't have a worry in the world. His preparation for Friday night's meeting with the Philadelphia 76ers, the Thunder's 13-14 record, and the notion of heading back to New York didn't change his established mood of "stay mellow." Knicks, Porzingis health, Hardaway Jr. on hold, and Carmelo's return next chapter. Carmelo Anthony closes Knicks chapter with a smile and a win. Stabbed in the back. Carmelo Anthony moving on from Knicks after getting stabbed in the back. "We'll all be there for Melo," said Paul George, who was soundly booed in his return to Indiana Wednesday. "The same way Melo was there for me the other night. He hasn't asked for any advice. He knows what level he needs to be at. He knows what kind of environment it will be." The road trip has been like a reunion tour for these stars after Anthony was dealt to OKC for Enes Kanter, Doug McDermott and the Bulls' second-round pick, while George was sent to the Thunder in exchange for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. "It's been a little bit different," Donovan said. "I said before we played New York the first game of the year, maybe not too soon after we played Indiana. It's a little bit different when you play those teams in OKC. But I think for Paul going back to Indiana and then obviously Carmelo tomorrow going back to New York, there's emotions there. Those guys invested a lot of time and those guys had very fond memories of the places they were at." Anthony did not speak in the morning other than to say hellos to familiar media faces, joking about his routines keeping him from talking until later in the night. But he has said recently that he is looking forward to the return to New York. "I'm excited to go back and play in the Garden," Anthony told reporters Wednesday night. "Play in front of those fans. Play in front of my family, my friends. But at the end of the day, it's business to me. But I'd be lying if I said I'm not ecstatic to be going back and playing there. Like I said, I got a different feeling with New York. A different relationship, different bond with the city, with the fans, with the people. It's a little bit special for me." He might be right to expect a different reception than George got in Indiana. While George asked for a trade, letting the Pacers know that he would not stay in Indiana when his contract ran out, Anthony had a very different parting. Anthony pushed to get to New York, forcing his way there from Denver in a trade in 2011 rather than waiting to be a free agent. And when Phil Jackson came aboard as team president in 2014, Anthony was a free agent just a few months later. Courted by contenders, he opted to stay in New York, even making a no-trade clause a requirement to a deal so he could assure himself of staying put. But as the Knicks' fortune soured under Jackson's stewardship, that no-trade clause became an albatross to Jackson's efforts to remake the team, and he orchestrated an ugly and often public campaign to try to get Anthony to give in and accept a trade. The barb stung, but Anthony took the high road throughout nearly the entire episode. When Jackson added Kristaps Porzingis to his enemies list this summer and also tried to convince ownership to offer to buy out the remaining $54 million of Anthony's deal that led to Jackson's firing, Anthony had finally had enough, too, seeing the relationship soured, and allowed a deal to a few selected venues, Cleveland, Houston or Oklahoma City. So will the fans who had such high hopes for Jackson blame Anthony or accept him as a player who wanted to be in New York? "I think he was as professional as you can be in his time here in New York," Porzingis said Thursday night. "I don't see why they would not receive with love." Anthony isn't sure, but he knows, kind of, how he will feel. He faced the Knicks on opening night in Oklahoma City, but knows it will be different to come back home. "You really can't explain?" Anthony said in Indiana. "I don't know until I actually get there on the court, feel the reaction, be in the atmosphere, Be in that environment. If I sit here and say, it's going to feel the same kind of way, right now, I'd be lying to you. I really don't know what it's going to feel like, what it's going to be like. I'm just looking forward to that. The Thunder are mostly just waiting for the two newcomers to gel with Russell Westbrook and begin to live up to the expectations of the star-studded roster. It's a never-ending process, Donovan said. You hope that a month from now you're better than you are today, in 2 months, 3 months, you just hope you keep getting better. These guys have been great. I've loved being around them. They're pros. They work hard. They care. They're putting forth great work each and every day. But again, Carmelo played a certain way with a certain group of players in New York for 7 years. Paul played the same way for 7 years. Russell, it's been 10 years here. Now you bring these players together and now you're taking what's made them successful with who they are, and they've gotten a lot of recognition, and rightfully so, deservedly so, because they're some of the better players in the league. When you talk about gelling and meshing and becoming a team, there's certain things that you have to do to become that kind of team you want to become, and they're probably a little bit different than what some of those guys have maybe done in the past. But I admire the fact at the way they're giving themselves of the team. Email, papa@northjersey.com